So we're going to hear now from John Skrentny and Mary Walshok, both of them whom came from San Diego, all the way from San Diego, to give us a preview of their forthcoming book. So, John, I take it away.
All right. Thanks, Kyle, and we're pleased to speak to this large group. It's a book that's in progress, so it's very exciting to see that. You can see they used my high school graduation picture there. But I have matured since then, and I'm excited to get going. There we go. All right. So meant to be deliberately provocative, who trains the already educated? We know the aggregate statistics. The aggregate statistics shows that the college educated are more likely to be employed, make more money, healthier, happier. But college grads are not set for life. And we just want to emphasize that for many years, they've faced vulnerabilities from technological change that leads to changes in their jobs. And this kind of disruption that can completely sidetrack their careers is occurring more rapidly and more frequently. Since at least the 80s, layoffs have been common for college-educated people, and booms and busts are the very common practice even in the supposedly secure fields in science, technology, engineering, and math. We haven't talked too much about AI in this room. We did want to emphasize that almost all the studies, it's a lot of guesswork right now, but almost all the studies show that AI is most likely to impact the college educated, remaking their jobs and giving them different kinds of tasks. I'm smitten with this book by sociologist Ofer Sharon called The Stigma Trap. 20% of American unemployed are in this category of long-term unemployed, where they get this stigma that the longer that they've been unemployed, the more employers question them and question, we don't want to hire these folks anymore, or there's something must be wrong with them. And what's interesting is that people with college degrees, people with work experience, people with advanced degrees are equally or more likely to be in this stigma trap. Probably seen some of this data coming out showing that some very highly technical jobs, highly educated people are the most exposed to disruption from AI, so this is going to be increasing. And so we think it's a growing hidden crisis. We want to make the argument today that most of these workers do not need another degree. They need fast, targeted training. I want to emphasize another crisis is this crisis in confidence in higher education. There is a lot of reasons for this, a lot of it related to tuition, a lot of things going on here, but we do think this is an opportune time to rethink what higher education institutions do. This is Gallup and Lumina data showing that over time, the percentage of Americans who have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in higher education has fallen from 60 to only 36%. And I did want to emphasize this is not just driven by Republicans, though that decline is the strongest. It's also, it spans politics, it spans education level, gender, age. This confidence in higher education is another growing crisis, we would argue. And so it's an opportune time for a new role for universities. We want to advocate that universities should go beyond their traditional role of launching students into their careers, into citizenship, into adulthood, to include this new role, sustaining careers throughout the life course. I want to emphasize these things go together. We're not saying one should be replaced. We're saying higher education should embrace these two tasks: career launching education, which builds these foundational skills that can last a lifetime. I've heard the phrase durable skills here today. And also this career sustaining training. And we specifically use the word training to emphasize it's much more targeted and narrow than the broad-based foundational education. We focus in this book on research universities, and we do that because, Mitchell, this is your shout out right here. It's actually, you're not at all, there's other authors here, but I gave Mitchell his shout out here. Research universities have this deep expertise and public trust. This is why in a great paper that Mitchell and his colleagues wrote, they use the metaphor of temples, that they're these kind of hallowed ground. Research universities also have a strong infrastructure and convening power. They have deep industry connections through their research and through some of their master's and PhD training. Mitchell uses the metaphor hub. Anchor is often used to describe this role as well. And Mitchell, I'm glad you're here because we need a new metaphor for what we're going to describe here. Research universities, we think, can best adapt and anticipate what skills needs are going to be coming so they can support mid-career learners. I have no idea. Keep thinking, give me something. Yeah, I see the wheels going. Okay, so career-sustaining training units. We've probably, how many different places have we been to? This is the latest mouthful. Career-sustaining training units. They're embedded but semi-autonomous within universities. They're different in different places. There's different types, different kinds of forms. But they have in common, they're all agile. They're all employer connected, and they're all learner focused. They operate, we learned in our research, like startups. They can adapt quickly, and they take risks. Here's some of the superstars for our book. UC San Diego Extended Studies, which Mary was the dean of for several years. Georgia Tech, you can see the different names here, which is why we needed to come up with this career-sustaining training unit. College of Lifetime Learning, University of Texas at Austin, their engineering executive education, Michigan's online and professional education, University of Washington's professional and continuing education, University of California, Santa Cruz set up an outpost in Silicon Valley through their extension school. They call it also professional education. These are some of the schools we think are exemplifying the best practices in this career-sustaining training. What are they doing? Key practices. These units have a long history of entrepreneurialism. There's this great idea coming out of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin idea, which was related, to these kinds of practices. What is the Wisconsin idea? They will teach anybody, anything, anywhere. And that's when these units are at their best, they're figuring out what skills are needed, and they will teach it. Non-degree credentials are the coin of the realm here. Some of them will also provide degrees, master's degrees, for example, but they're at their best when they're using non-degree credentials because of the agility and their nimbleness with these things, especially certificates. One of the key practices is deep employer partnerships. When these units are at their best, they have advisory boards made up of leaders, typically regional industry powers, sort of mirroring the cluster of that particular region, and they provide constant and continual feedback. We had to learn quite a bit about entrepreneurship and startups and all this sort of stuff from the management literature because we saw these universities through their career-sustaining training units doing similar things. Customer discovery. And the customers for these units, when they're at their best, are both learners and employers. We saw how they go through these iterative, market-aligned curriculum, iterative process of constant feedback with their learners and with their employers, making changes every year, maybe sometimes mid-year, starting new programs, sunsetting other programs that are no longer fulfilling employers' needs because the market has been saturated or the technology has changed. And when they're at their best, they have a public mission. And we define the public mission as one of access, which these units embrace through competitive pricing, offering the lowest prices that they can, and also modality. Career-sustaining training units are really good and have long been good since really the 1870s at coming up with new ways, new modes of teaching, using libraries, classrooms downtown, online education. They were early pioneers. So they do what they have to do in order to provide access. And they also, as part of their public mission, emphasize quality. And one of the ways they do this is through quality instructors, which sometimes will mean latter rate faculty from the main campus. Other times it'll mean practitioners. It'll mean folks who are working in industry who know exactly what the employers are looking for right now. For mid-career learners trying to make a course correction, trying to keep up with technology, a practitioner who doesn't necessarily and probably doesn't have a PhD might be the best instructor that they can have. And another part, and kind of a measure of quality, is employer satisfaction. These units, when they're at their best, are in constant contact with these employers, and they learn what's working and what's not working, and make the changes that they need to. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Mary here, who can give you flesh out some of these big, broad points with some actual examples of how we've done it at University of California, San Diego. But by no means are we saying we're the only ones who do this.
In fact, the book is full of stories, and stories matter to regions, to legislatures, and to employers of how you build these programs in a highly collaborative, entrepreneurial way. And we wanted to share 3 stories just as an example from UC San Diego. And I think it's important to underscore that the first story we're telling you started in 1991. And anyone who knows the wireless telephony industry knows that it was completely transformed by a then unknown company by the name of Qualcomm that introduced a new programming platform for digital communications. And Qualcomm, the founder, just happened to be a friend and a colleague on the faculty at UCSD. He left very quickly. They didn't want him. He got an evaluation. We're not sure Dr. Jacobs is serious about undergraduate teaching. He's doing a lot. And so he spun out, and he and Bill Gates are now giving away all their money. At any rate, Irwin recognized very, very early, as they began to scale up this company using something called CDMA as their wireless standard, when Motorola and everybody else was using TDMA, that he was hiring engineers from Maryland, from MIT, from Illinois, from Berkeley, who'd never had a course in CDMA. But they were electrical engineers. They were interested in wireless telephony, in satellite communications. So he literally called me and he said, Mary, you're the new extension dean. You got to start a program that qualifies all the engineers I'm hiring in our new technology. And the first sequence we put together was 4 courses. And it was just called a certificate in CDMA. 1,800 engineers later, we then went on to create, I'm going to read to you in a 10-year period just for this industry, and then I'll describe to you the process. In fact, John's described the process very well. Working collaboratively with directors of research. Never work with HR directors. Work with, no, but I'm serious, because the people who are the product developers, the marketing developers, the heads of purchasing, they know what kinds of hands-on skills they need. And research universities, I think, have been uniquely good at engaging those sorts of hands-on professionals, which is why John mentioned professional school relationships as well as the research agenda enhance the ability to get really good knowledge from practice into the conversation about how we as an academic institution with our unique kind of knowledge can bundle the sort of foundational skills, knowledge they're going to need with the skills they need here and now. And so within a year of establishing that, I'm just going to read you the list of certificates because they're so damn esoteric. Okay? But they were anywhere from 4 to 8 courses. They came out of this collaborative process. They were taught by faculty sometimes and taught by practitioners, but this co-creation process, which had practitioners and faculty together in the room, said, no. You need chemistry for that. I'm going to tell you about one we did in clinical trials management in a minute. And so we had a real chemistry course from the campus. But in another place, oh, no, you just have to fill out forms for the FDA. You guys don't know how to do that. Your faculty don't, but we have people in industry who do. So we went on to create embedded computer hardware, embedded computer systems engineering, VLSI, digital design, broadband mobile wireless engineering, integrated circuit design engineering, wireless engineering, mobile applications development, mobile device programming. And all of these programs were developed by UC San Diego over a 10-year period. And just in the region, there were over 3,000 certificate completers. And the employers, they were already employed or they were getting jobs. And some of those were those wonderful liberal arts graduates we all love because we believe in the liberal arts curriculum, particularly at the undergraduate level. What I think is important about the CDMA example, and John's going to say a little bit more about this, is not just the process we used, but the fact that we at UC San Diego were one of the early adopters of online learning, and the designers of our online learning system were Qualcomm. So they wanted the availability of an online curriculum as well as face-to-face. And so we had to develop an infrastructure on campus in 1991, 1992. This is very early, folks. And that allowed us to be extremely responsive to other employers in other content areas moving down the road. So there are mutual benefits often from working with industry that we want to underscore. Now, the second area that has been an important area, I guess the only other thing I would say, and it's true of all three examples I'm giving you, is this is a hyper-regional example, which now is an international program because of online learning. And when you ask, what validates it? Well, it was designed by Qualcomm and UC San Diego, the 6th highest ranked engineering school in the United States. That's the validation. And the thing about the package, we were talking at lunch, what people say is, oh yeah, I got my wireless or my mobile applications training at UC San Diego. Did you get a bachelor's degree? Did you get a master's degree? Did you get a certificate? They usually don't say what. They just say, this is the content, here's who I got it from. So that is what we're discovering is true in many, many places around the country. Oh, John, you're going to have to switch it for me. I'm 82. That's my excuse. Okay, I want to tell you a second example. And the reason I think it's so interesting is many of you, I think it's more relevant to many more places than just ours. The digital revolution and the revolution in biotech technology and in pharmaceuticals has affected healthcare delivery as well as drug development and medical device development in places like Memphis, in Indiana, New Jersey, California, across the country. And early on, San Diego became one of the earliest incubators of biotech companies. We were early into that. And it was based on a basic research profile. We have a lot of research institutions in San Diego. The Salk Institute, the Scripps Medical Institution, UCSD, big medical school, National Cancer. We had 2 national cancer centers. I mean, we're going back to Nixon, folks, when these kinds of centers were established. And there was a huge gap, which was how do you go from the bench to the bedside? Does that make sense? Out of the lab and into the patient. Because you can't do it with mice or monkeys or pigs or goats. Those of you who are in research universities know we have very large animal care facilities on our campus and about 300 people who work there. So when you move to patients, there are all sorts of protocols as well as very specific technical know-how you need to have to test a cancer drug or a drug for diabetes. And so we were approached because of the Qualcomm example. Could the university do something similar in the area of clinical trials management? Now, those of you who have medical schools or hospitals are doing clinical trials all over the country. It's not just nurses and medical and professionals. You have technical people, you have computing people, you have accounting people, you have laboratory hygiene and management, you have equipment repair people who are all involved in the clinical trials management ecosystem, if you will. And so we were able to convene this broad range of practitioners along with research faculty who already had some experience in this space to identify skills and competencies that would result in a certificate in clinical trials management. And we launched that. That one was in 2000. So it was still very early in the development of what today is a burgeoning area of employment across the nation. What was interesting about that particular certificate, which again, we're talking about thousands of enrollments, because of the online capacity, but also because places like Houston and Seattle and Memphis were building their biotech industry clusters, that curriculum was adopted and adapted on those campuses. So for years, the dean at Washington and I were signing diplomas for about 50 graduates each, but we're talking 20 years ago, in clinical trials management because we shared this curriculum. So again, it's hyper-local, but local in a way that's relevant to other regions with similar employment configurations. The whole nation is not one economy. The nation is a rich array of industries, service sector, finance, and not everyone is going to want to be credentialed in what we do, but it turned out a half a dozen regions across the United States benefited. A final example about which we're really proud, and this is related to COVID, and thank you, Qualcomm, for helping us build the infrastructure of online education. What happened with COVID is the public schools closed down. And teachers who had primarily been classroom teachers in K through 12 were suddenly being asked, well, you're going to have to Zoom or you're going to have to deliver. We've got to keep the education going and doing it on and potentially online, but they hadn't been trained. It happened that the extension program had a very long and complicated teaching online learning, which was basically being adopted by corporations using online learning tools. And a foundation, a local foundation, approached us and said, could you create a 1 week, which means 40-hour course just in time in the next 2 months so that, and we'll make it available for free to teachers across Southern California. And the university was able to do that, and 6,800 teachers from Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego enrolled in that intensive and then used those skills in the school at no cost because the foundation underwrote it. So when John and I talk about what research universities can do, and the reason we're so kind of stuck on our entrepreneurial risk-taking language is we've discovered programs like this in Texas, in Michigan, in Georgia. I mean, Georgia Tech is amazing. And we know that universities have the capacity to do this, but they don't always have the wonderful comment one of the earlier speakers made, the incentives or the will. And what we're finding is that public research universities are very promising platforms, and particularly land grant universities with that long tradition. May I share the tuition examples? We, and I don't want to embarrass anyone here, but one of the areas that we thought was so interesting was, all this the digital revolution and data analytics, and how that took hold about 10 years ago. And again, in the UC system, I think Stanford, a lot of places did certificate programs through their schools of engineering or their extension programs. But a number of schools also initiated master's degrees. And we discovered, because we interviewed at Harvard, we interviewed folks at Chicago, we interviewed Georgia Tech, all over the country. Georgia Tech was offering an online data analytics degree for $8,200, master's degree. And from the president to the dean of engineering, this is a public service. We have to equip our regional workforce. We go to Chicago, Northwestern, same degree, $68,000. We ask the dean, oh, you don't understand. The president and the dean expect me to be a profit center. And then we go to Harvard, it's only 42,000. You don't understand. I'm in the College of Liberal Arts. They expect us to contribute margin to undergraduate education. So the reason John and I feel so strongly about this public access dimension is we have visited places like NYU, and I don't know how many of you remember their former president and former Indiana Senator, John Bradamus. His tagline for NYU was a private university in the public service. And we think higher education has to reclaim that. So we only have a few minutes, and I'm going to, what you'll find in the book very quickly, and then we'll have conversation, research-based insights, interviews and case examples, as I've just shared with you, best practices and policy recommendations, and also this emphasis on the significance of local regional industry employment trends to training in a post-information age. And also suggested frameworks to build effective CST units. Okay, John, you'll handle Q&A, right? Oh, I've got more bullet points. Oh, and the belief. No, this is important. The eroding confidence in universities. What you'll read in this book is extraordinary professors, deans, and presidents who are making a commitment to support and scale this kind of education. But it's episodic, it's here and there. It's not core yet to the mission of research universities. Thank you very much. So I'll let you take the last three, or maybe you have questions. What we're saying is we think we have an optimistic good story to tell.
Yeah, so for the record, I never heard this talk before, barely knew about it.
Okay.
So my enthusiasm. Two thoughts about it. One is, yes, but they've also done it at the high end of their price point. So, what is executive education for business? There are scores of industry experts who teach us.
Right.
So, for the privilege of having people on their view of being associated, not something that is external to the DNA.
Yeah.
Baked in. It's just that those places have been distracted, by a very small portion of the population. Last I checked, they're facing who are offering, I think, a very powerful old ways of doing new business.
Yes.
The other thing I think is really nice to contrast with the excellent conversations we were having this morning, that a lot of this is about relationships.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And even when relationships
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
What I feel is really, what I find often very frustrating about credentials, that when credentials are valuable, they're valuable because they are the proxies for relationships. Out a relationship builds almost meaningless. So you're providing a very powerful alternative way of thinking about where the value of credentials come from. Real engineering.
Yeah.
Which is like, how do we get those million actually embody real?
Yeah.
Where the trust is.
And the trust was the point made this morning. We were very inspired by the panels this morning.
Wait, let me just one point on Mitchell. We, in the process of researching this book, we met some amazing professors who had this public mission, and even though they weren't rewarded that much,
They
from a
still
money
did it.
standpoint, from their time is very valuable. They still wanted to do this. They wanted to serve. And the other side of the public mission, we don't think of leaders of major corporations as they're serving their shareholders. They wanted to be on these advisory boards. And one of the universities we met with in Chicago, it was either University of Chicago or Northwestern. They said that they thought they would have to pay industry people to offer their views, and they didn't. They realized they just had to give them lunch, and then they were happy to be there, kind of like us here, and they were happy to share. And so this public mission is there, and it's just not coordinated and fully tapped.
Yes.
Some early evidence from training literature suggests that the employer is more willing to invest in high productivity. Just described sounds similar, and I'm wary of the equity.
Yeah. No.
The wage disparity impact of
So
our educated population, i.e., offering the CTE. So, what is your empirical observation on the employers got to get the people time off, right?
we have very good data. The clinical trials management is almost no college grads. What we've learned in biotech, and it's true in the Valley too, Mitch, 40% of the people who work in biotech are not college grads. They're technical, they're they're accounting people, they're project management folks. And the fact that the leaders of the biotech industry who are getting their IP from the campus said to the chancellor, clinical trials management, and he said, we don't do that at UCSD. Well, if you want to support this industry, we need it. So I think we need to understand that even what may sound like elite sectors have significant components of technical and mid-skilled workers. And we argue that universities can play a role there too.
The other thing it's a great question, but one of the things that we like to emphasize is that regional economies are like ecosystems, and if the top half of the food chain is not healthy, then that's going to wither. That industry is going to wither, and when companies leave, then the mid-tier workers lose out. All the people who the restaurants, the cafes, all the people who would be where these people would spend money, they're going to be losing out as well. And so, keeping all levels of education trained, engaged, and sustained. That's why we say these workers are vulnerable too, and the industry will leave. I was still so sad. A major company left San Diego because they couldn't find higher level talent that they needed, so they left. And that meant they actually wanted, it was a cybersecurity company. They wanted managers who understood cybersecurity. They didn't think there were enough there. And so they left. And so that means the lower level people, had to move or do something else. The custodians are not working there anymore. I mean, all the way down the line. So that's one thing that we would emphasize.
So what we learned from healthcare is for every medical doctor, there are 3 nurses' jobs. And for every 3 nurses, there are 8 technical jobs. They do blood, you see what I'm getting at? For every engineer, our Economic Development Council reports, there are 3 jobs that an engineer in your economy creates. So that's why we're making the case research universities have a role to play, and it has to be in partnership with other institutions, but it's relevant. Are you, Time to finish. We'd love to talk to you. We'll be here all afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks so much.